Hello and welcome to another edition of City Corner, an ongoing discussion program about what's going on in our community. Today our topic is boards, commissions, and committees, and joining us is Library Board Chairperson Jana K. Lundstad, and then we have Deputy City Clerk Debbie Barham joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So we have 11 boards, committees, and commissions in the city.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about what the benefit of those committees are?
Well, let me start off with that the City of Richland is a first-class, full-service city.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that it has traditional services like parks and rec, police and fire services, streets, that kind of thing. But it also has atypical services that include the library and electrical services. So that helps, and with all of that diversity, with those 11 different areas that we really think about, those boards, commissions, and committees are key in helping make the city even better. They act as advisors to the council in making recommendations that benefit the city and helping the services even be better.
They serve as a volunteer expert, essentially,
Correct.
for the city.
Yes.
So I've always wondered, we have boards, commissions, and committees.
Mm-hmm.
Why are there differences in terminology with respect to those volunteers?
Well, I think that's more of a semantic, but there are a little bit of differences. Again, all of them report to the council as advisory bodies, but there are a few differences. For instance, committees, they really are just truly advisory committees. So an example would be the Utility Advisory Committee. That body does all of the, makes recommendations for all of the utility rate structures, and they bring them forth to council for recommendation. Now, a commission is a little bit different. They have a little bit more autonomy. They will make some recommendations, and a good example of that would be Board of Adjustment. They listen to appeals on zoning matters, mm-hmm. and will make decisions on that. Now, library board, that's where Jana comes involved, and that's really set by the Revised Code of Washington. And she is, well, the library board is most autonomous, and they can make decisions affecting the library directly as long as it's within the budget that council has set for the library board.
What type of knowledge or experience does a BCC member have to bring to the table?
Well, it varies.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's based on that particular board, commission, or committee. And the best way to know is to read our code, our municipal code, because it details what the requirements are, what's needed. One of the things for most of our boards, commissions, and committees, you're required to be a resident of the City of Richland. However, there are some exceptions, mm-hmm. and those exceptions would be like the Lodging Tax
Yes.
Advisory Committee, where like 2 of those committee members have to participate in spending the money from the lodging tax, mm-hmm. but the other 2 have to be the ones that collect the lodging tax. So those are the hoteliers. So that's an example. The Economic Development Committee, that's another committee that allows for corporate citizens.
Right.
So other than that, so there's a few variances, but other than that, you would need to be a city resident, number 1, and then follow any of the other requirements.
So, Jana K.,
mm-hmm.
you're the library chair.
Yes.
Why did you become involved?
For a couple of different reasons. You know, outside of the library, I work at Washington State University Tri-Cities, and I've been very aware working there how much the community has supported our campus, mm-hmm. and interacting with students from Richland, well, from all the Tri-Cities, but getting to know the students in this community and their needs and their interests. And mm-hmm. I'm sure Debbie can relate to this, but when you're a public employee, mm-hmm. there's a real sense of gratitude for the people who are supporting your organization, and I think a desire to give back and to be involved in making sure that you're giving to the community just as much as you're mm-hmm. receiving from the community. So that was part of it. The other is I participated in Leadership Tri-Cities, and in that program you really get a sense of all the issues that the cities are facing, the things that they can need help with, and where you can fit in And
Right.
so after that, getting a sense of where I could be involved in civic engagement was really exciting, and that's when I started looking at different commissions and boards that I might be a part of.
So did you look at the variety of opportunities we had and then chose to go with the library?
Yes. So I had actually, before moving to Richland several years ago, I was in Kennewick, and I served on the Kennewick Arts Commission. And I made that decision because after being in Leadership Tri-Cities and looking at all the areas where there's need, figuring out what would be a good fit for me, you know, there's always a need for working with children. I'm not very good with kids, so maybe that's not where I want to go.
Right.
When I saw there was an opening on the library board after I moved to Richland, I was really excited because, you know, I was an English major in college. I really like research. I love the library, and so that seemed like it was a good fit for me to bring my professional skills, but also meet some personal interests.
So
That's great.
it's a time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
What is a traditional time commitment for you, let's just say for a month? And what are some of the impacts that the library board has actually made to our community?
We meet once a month for an hour. And we sometimes go over. We very rarely go under. But for the meeting, it's not too much of a time commitment. We get all of the minutes, the agenda, the budgets, the manager's report, all of that, our packet of material before the meeting. And so I probably spend about an hour or so when I get that, reviewing the material and then looking at it again, making sure I understand it, especially the budget. We have some fiscal responsibilities, and I want to make sure that I know how to read those budget lines. So there's the meetings, the prep for the meetings. We've added a little bit of time commitment. We chose to because I thought as a chair it was important for me to also be working with the Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library. And so we also have a monthly chairs meeting just to make sure that our priorities and initiatives align with each other. And then we have occasional special meetings. Twice a year we have larger meetings with all of the board members from the Friends, the foundation, and the board, where we're getting together to review the budget, to talk about what our goals are for the upcoming year.
You mentioned that we have a variety of different types of committees, BCCs. I'll
Right.
say all three of them
Good.
and shorten it down. So are all of them advisory, or do some of them take more of a role in decision making for the city?
Yes, yes to both. They are all advisory to the council, but some do take more active roles, such as the library board, which you can address in that very well.
Yeah, we definitely are advisory, but we do have to set some policy. So when I first came onto the board, one of the issues we were working on were the policy for unattended minors, because we have quite a few kids who are in the library for quite a bit of time. Maybe their parents are at work and they've dropped them off, or they've come for one of our activities, and they're just there a little bit longer and are by themselves. So we had to figure out what policies we could set that would protect those children and also protect the staff. We worked really closely with city staff and the city attorney to make sure that we were addressing all the appropriate issues. But that was a policy that we were able to establish and vote on, and council didn't have to vote on that particular issue.
Yeah. And another example would be the Code Enforcement Board. You know, they've been tasked to listen to appeals for code violations that come before them. And in the case that they do assess a monetary penalty, they have that ability to do that without going to council, so they can do that outright. A good example would be like junk vehicles in front of in the front yards of residents. They can go in, and if it meets the criteria for a violation of our civil laws, then they can do that.
So how does Richland compare in its use of the BCCs in an advisory role with other cities?
Well, I really can't speak to other cities. I've only had the experience here at the City of Richland, but you know, talking with and viewing council meetings at other cities, it seems like they're pretty typical within each city. They may vary from the amount of different boards and commissions. Some cities may have fewer, but others have more. It really depends. So that's really what it is about.
When, Jana Kay, when you volunteered, because some people actually forget that you guys are volunteers, because you guys are volunteers, you don't get paid for what you do. Maybe we'll give you some free water every now and then.
Which I appreciate, thank you.
And I know that you were a volunteer in Kennewick, but when you came to Richland, have you gotten what you thought you would out of it, or how has your experience been when you originally joined?
You know, I think I've gotten more out of it than I expected. The interactions that we've had with staff have been really informative. I feel like I've learned a lot about how the city operates. You know, we were recently restructured to be under Parks and Rec. So there was a learning curve there to kind of imagine how we fit into that category, because I wouldn't have necessarily thought of the library as being part of Parks. But seeing how this public space, how, you know, providing public space for civil discourse, for community events, for people to come together.
Right.
And then looking at the policies that the community center has and how we need to make sure that we're following some of those similar policies because we're in the same organization. So I feel like one of the things I've learned is how much things are connected in the city and how a decision we're going to make in the library may affect someone else, another staff member or another commission member.
That was
for
so
the
well
city.
said.
Well, earlier we were talking off camera, and you mentioned that getting to know staff was very important for your board. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Well, we decided as a board that if we were going to be making some policy decisions, that we needed to know the day-to-day work of the staff of the library. We didn't want to make decisions that would hinder their work, and unless we understood what the ins and outs of their jobs and what was important to them, then we wouldn't be able to make as good a decisions as we should. And so that's been a really fun aspect. We've been trying to get staff members to come to at least every other meeting and just learning a little bit about the collections process, the weeding process, the hiring process. And it's been fascinating and impressive, because we have some incredibly talented and committed staff members who work at that library.
The library, it's across the board with different departments, but the library staff is so dedicated to that library and all of the events and activities that surround it. It's an amazing group of people that you're blessed to be able to work with.
You know, Kelly came in to talk about the programming for the children's programming over the summer, and she was so enthusiastic, and I just felt like our community was so fortunate that she was there putting those programs together, because she truly sees herself as a steward of the library.
Right.
She's not just there because it's her job, but she believes in what she's doing and wants to provide the best experiences possible. And you can't help but be energized by being around people like that.
Right. So you speak of policy making and how the library has handled some of those issues. Is there a proper process that the advisory BCCs go through with respect to advising council on different issues?
Yeah, well, as Jenna said, that each of them have their own agendas and meeting times, and they review concerns and questions and maybe ideas that come from the community and the citizenship or from staff, and they culminate all of that. And then they work with staff to bring it forward to council through a council action or a report, depending on what the situation may be. Many of them do report to council on an annual basis with a report of what they accomplished the year before in their particular area, and then what their plans are for in the future. So it's definitely a dance with council, staff, and the boards, commissions, and committee members.
And the council's very aware of the time commitment that the committee members put into it.
Each of well, I guess I could speak for us, but I think it's true of the other groups, is we have a council liaison who attends our meetings. So Sandra Kent, you know, I'm amazed with how busy she is with council business, and that she takes the time to attend all of our meetings. She rarely misses. And so because she's there, we know what's important to council. We kind of get some of our ideas vetted before we start making recommendations.
Right.
And we, you know, I think I've spoken a couple times how it's really important that we're aligning what we do with council priorities and city values. And because Sandra's there, we get that feedback.
And it saves everyone time.
Absolutely.
So you're not going down a road and then
Right.
suddenly decide that you have to
Right.
turn right.
You know,
because
one
it's
of the
wrong
things
direction.
we've been focused on this, well, I would say since I've been a member, is how we could expand services to South Richland.
Oh, yes.
Because there's been so much growth and not everybody can make it to core Richland on a regular basis. Well, we had what I thought were some amazing ideas. And then we talked to Joe and we talked to Sandra and found out that maybe we didn't quite know how things worked. And so it was helpful to get that feedback initially before we had spent a lot of time coming up with plans.
Right. And to understand the complexity of
Right.
the entire city, you're focused on the library and their needs, and then how that impacts the
Right.
rest.
Right, and again, it's that sense of interconnectedness and how one decision we make could have a snowball effect, for good or bad, in different areas across the city.
And so earlier you mentioned that there's different types of BCCs that we have here. And which ones are, some are state mandated, right?
Yes.
And then others are through our RMC, correct?
Correct.
What's the difference?
Well, we have actually one that is a federal law, and that's the Americans with Disabilities Citizens Review Committee. Then we have 4, and the Library Board of Trustees is one of them, that are state mandated. And the other ones include the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, and then the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Right.
And then the other 6 were created at the discretion of council.
As a city, what is the value of having the BCCs be as transparent as the rest of the policy for the government?
Well, I think, you know, the boards, commissions, and committees, the members are key for a transparent government. And the reason why that is because, again, they are an arm, and they can go and check in detail with council, with the community's desires and needs, concerns, and they bring them back. And like you said, Jana, with the discussion with council, the council liaison and staff members, they can vet out what is needed, and then they can bring that forth to council for a recommendation. Now, not all recommendations are acted upon. Again,
Right.
this is an interesting part about being in a local government. Sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time, saying the right words to get action done. You may have the right words and the right ideas, but if it's not the right time, actions, you know, it's not going to go forward.
Right.
And that's why I think it's a wonderful thing that they have all 3 components to help, because ultimately we all want to do what's right and the best for the city to make it grow and prosper and live in a vibrant community. So,
And if I may, I could
Yeah.
speak to that, I think, a little bit. You know, each of these meetings, we have our public portions where people can come and speak. The most common group we have are Richland High School students, because as part of their civics course, they're required to participate in, I think, 3 or 4 different meetings each year. I think we're popular because we really do meet for pretty much an hour.
They've learned.
They've learned. Word spreads. But there have been times where we've had 15 to 20 students at our meeting, and we give them time during public comment to speak up, and they have good ideas. And
Really?
then
They speak up?
They speak up, and
That's
they
nice.
have strong opinions, and they're smart. And what's been really fun is we've sometimes had them at our meetings, and then I've gone to city council the next week because I know there's going to be some discussion about library business, and those same students are at the council meeting. And I think what an opportunity. I don't even know if the school has realized what an opportunity they've given us to educate the students
Right.
about how to be more involved and how much they can have a voice and how things move forward.
So having a voice, do you, as a board member, how do you feel the council values so let's talk about libraries specifically, the library board's advice?
Well, the fact that Sandra attends each of our meetings and participates in the discussion, she reads the agendas, she reads the manager's report, she can explain the budget issues. So I've always felt like I've been able to speak up and ask a question. There were some changes to some of how our fiscal reports were presented. You know, one of our board members is really good at budgets, Duke Mitchell. If you ever need help with a budget, I recommend you call Duke. You know, he was able to actually schedule time to meet with city staff to make sure that he fully understood the changes. And I don't know that that happens in every city. I don't know that every city would give so much access to staff for their volunteer boards and to listen so much. But Sandra's been amazing.
So I'm a liaison. I'm the liaison for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and I have always been given the utmost freedom to be able to communicate with my lodging tax. I consider I have ownership of them. They're mine, and I take care of them the way that I need to. And if they have any questions or they need to sit down, much like what you're talking about with the library board, we as staff are, you know, given many opportunities to be able to work with our boards, BCCs, and that comes from the top down.
And we appreciate that because we don't want to make decisions blindly. And the city staff have been so good about communicating change and again communicating priorities and giving us feedback.
Well, I think that's key, is the communication piece and being able to be up on the issues, know the legislative activities that are going on, know council's strategic plan.
Yeah.
Well, and the idea isn't, we're not asking for your advice just based off of to check a box. It's pure, it's really, you're an expert in this area or you have knowledge that can help the city. So we're using you as much as you'll let us.
Well, I was really pleased just this week. We received, you know, everybody's getting ready to present their budgets to council. And we got a copy of what Joe will be presenting for Parks and Rec. And there was a specific portion on the library. We got that before his presentation so we could give feedback. What I was really happy about, and I've been meaning to email Joe, but instead maybe I'll just tell him to watch this. He included some data that we've been collecting. We thought it was really important to start tracking circulation, gate count, volunteer hours, how many people are using our books and things like that. And we've put together a book of data trends. Well, Joe pulled those out and used some in his budget presentation. And so I really felt like we had had a chance to speak up and have what we think is important presented to council, and that we were kind of spot on in that what we thought was important actually was.
So if you had someone just come up to you and had never volunteered ever, what would you say to them?
Start. You know, we have some regular openings. I know some of the boards and commissions maybe have different terms of service, but the timing is, I think, becoming more
we've recently adjusted. Yes.
And so take a look at what there are. I mean, there are 11 different organizations that are all a little bit different. And so you can see where your best fit is. And it's okay if you apply and don't get appointed your first time. I applied for Parks and Rec Commission once and didn't get appointed, and that was okay. We've just recently had an opening on the library board, and we had quite a few applicants, and we were really pleased with the strength of the pool of the applicants. We interviewed everybody. Even though we could only appoint one, I think I took something away from each one of those interviews of how we could be doing something else with the board, that it was another avenue for public input. So even that interview process, if you don't get appointed, is incredibly valuable to the city. And then just if you don't get appointed once, try again. And if you don't get appointed again, try again. And there are also all these events with the community at the community center, with the First Thursday. You know, the city can use help. And so even if it's not in an official capacity on a board, a commission, or a committee, there are ways to contribute.
Well said. So you spoke about us streamlining the application process. Do you want to talk about if someone does want to volunteer, how do they actually do that?
Well, in terms of streamlining, we have 2 times a year, in March and September, when the terms expire. It is a bit of a process. On a typical opening or vacancy, it starts about 8 weeks out. We post the application packet out on the web and to the, I think I shared that with you before, to the different news outlets.
And we share it on social media and
Correct.
reader board
Yes,
and everywhere.
yeah. Thank you for that.
I
Yep.
saw mine when I applied for the library board. It was on the reader board. I was driving by and
good
saw
to
it.
know.
So
Yeah.
Thank you.
it works.
Anyway, so that takes a couple of weeks to get that all in, and then we review to make sure that all the applicants meet the requirements, and then they go on to the council, to the chairs, and they do the interviewing, which is great, and then a recommendation is brought back to staff, which then gets it on to the council. So it's a little onerous, but it really is well worth the effort. I just think that when I hear from people like you, I am so grateful that I get to be in the position I am to help with the city. It's all about civil service and helping make the community a better place.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you.
And the application process isn't
Oh, it's so
No.
simple.
too large or anything.
No, it requires
Sometimes that does deter people.
Yeah,
That's
no,
true.
It's a very simple process, and I don't mean
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
just to speak over you, but I know we keep a list of the people who've applied, and then if something happens and we need a go-to person, we know who's interested in the library, and we've got kind of this other pool. So if something happened mid-year, or
Right.
we would be able to reach out to some folks if needed, or if we need advice in a particular area.
Yeah. If there's an opening within the year, we notify those candidates that didn't place and make an appointment to let them know that they can reapply, and oftentimes they do. Every once in a while they'll go and do something else, but
This wasn't a planned question. What's the retention rate for our BCCs for return?
well, now that we have this new system where we have the term expirations twice a year, it doesn't seem like I'm constantly posting anymore. But there are occasions when a member has to leave because they've got a new job, they've moved to a different city, and if their requirement was that they be a City of Richland resident. So when that happens, we just go ahead and post at that point for a 2-week period, then start the process from that on. And it may take, 3 weeks to get somebody appointed, up to maybe, a month.
And if someone's interested, we put it on our reader board, we put it
Yes.
on social media, we
Have it on the web page.
on the website, we communicate to the media.
Correct.
So it's normally, depending on the news day during that time period, it normally shows up in the briefs. And then also we have a direct link that will go from our news section on our website that goes into the boards, commissions, and committees webpage that describes everything and has an application there.
Right. Well, and then we can't forget the board members themselves or the committee members themselves. They also can go out and recruit, and I hope that they do. If they know of another person that would fit the bill, would be an added benefit to that particular board and commission, that they hand them their own application and ask them to apply.
So it's about time for us to wrap up. Is there anything that you would like someone viewing this to know about our BCCs, other than just get out there and do it?
Get out there and do it. It is, as I said at the beginning, it has been such a valuable experience for me personally, as well as professionally. I'm learning things with the city staff and with the budget process that I've been able to take back to my job, and it's allowed me to think about things in a different way. So personally and professionally satisfied, and there is just something about knowing that you're contributing. I'm so proud to be from Richland and to know that what I do makes a difference. And I want everybody to experience that. I've told Ann she's never going to get rid of me. If I'm not on the board, I'm going to be there making public comment.
See,
I
there
agree.
you go.
It's incredibly rewarding.
Well, Jana Kay, thank you so much for joining us, and Debbie, of course. If anyone's going to be volunteering, it would go through Debbie, so
Correct.
you'll know Debbie a lot. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We look forward to the next time.